Today's actually the global launch of a product called People Profit. It's a SaaS system. It allows you to conduct the business of HR management anywhere, anytime, online. It's mobile, it's scalable, it's a SaaS product, and it captures and records and uses the data that we are all talking about. So, a couple of things about it. Set up. To set something up, you can set that up to meet the strategic objectives of the organisation. That's pretty key. So it's not an out-of-the-box, here's how we do it. You structure it around the competencies that you need and measure the things that are important in your organisation. That's something we'll have a look as we go through. And then the modules within it are people register, a competency model, an appraisal system, career development plans, and then position descriptions, job descriptions, and org design. So people register. One of the things I often find in an organisation, I'm chairman of a public company, we've got to put a report out that says what's the diversity in this organisation. Somebody's actually got to go down and count how many men and how many women are in the organisation. Organisations are not good at keeping the basic data about the people that they employ. So our people register not only has the ability for some social data, but every bit of information that relates to that person, from the employment offer, all the reviews that have ever happened, details, next of kin details, anything that you're going to want to know. Who were the referees when they were first interviewed and recruited? What are their capabilities been or competencies been over their career? What trend has occurred with that? What's their salary history and all those things? Things that we can't easily get our hands on, need to be in this electronic filing cabinet, some of which is public so that the other people in the organisation can see them, and some of which is private because it's obviously confidential and relevant just to them and HR. In terms of competencies, we've taken the view, after a lot of consideration and research, that we start on the basis of there being 5 core competencies. The discipline proficiency of a person is how good are you? Richard talked about mastery, personal mastery. If you're a finance person, how good are you at your craft? If you're a marketing person, if you're a designer, if you're a logistical person or in charge of distribution, how good are you at doing that job? That's the core competency. And we'll get into these in a bit more detail. And then, how are you at dealing with people, external or internal people? How client-centric are you? And if you're a finance person, who are your clients? To what extent are you commercial? Even in a non-for-profit organisation, you need to be commercial. Commercial is saying getting the most value for the money that you spend. We take those competencies and they are actually broken down into attributes, these different attributes. And if we measure those attributes, we're going to get a sense of the overall capability of the organisation. So let's just say that we had measured those attributes. Won't worry too much about how, just for now. And this is like a stoplight chart where green is great, red is disaster, and amber is on the cusp. So this would give us a measure of, in this organisation, in terms of personal mastery, then yes, we're quite strong. In terms of the experience we've got, how long have people been working and doing that job? Medium. Problem with skills transfer. The attributes, and we'll get into what that means in a minute, about how good we are at sharing our skills, which is obviously something that's going to be core in discipline proficiency. If you don't share that knowledge, your ability to do that, if that's a problem, then that's not a good thing, and that's something that needs to be addressed in terms of your competencies. So does that make sense? So if we can measure each of those things and aggregate it, we can have a sense of what is the capability of this organisation. So that's one of the things that we need to start to do. Now when we have a look at that and have that data, we can start to do all sorts of wonderful things in slicing and dicing that data. We might have a look at the competencies of the people in the Sydney office as against the Melbourne office, and see that where's the green, where's the red. So the first map was overall. This is having a look at that by office. We can filter that information by the disciplines, the departments, the officers, by gender, by qualifications, by any element you like. Once you've got the database, you can interrogate that data, and that will give you a huge amount of information on where the capability in the organisation lies. You can take a particular attribute and have a look at the scores for the areas within that attribute and break it up. Once you've got the data, you can interrogate it in the same way as Trent does with the P&L, when he digs in and gets down to the last petty cash docket, the things that aggregate up to that score, you can get that information. Now, what might we use that for? If we've got that information, what might we use that for? What training should we be focusing on? In terms of recruitment, you know, if we've got problems about client centricity, in as much as there's very little there that's giving us encouragement, then we've clearly either got to train or recruit or replace to bring that skill, that competency onto the team. When we go and look out for recruitment to bring someone into Melbourne or wherever it happens to be, we're going to want to see that we are recruiting things that actually deliver these competencies. So this comes back to, where does this relate back to the business strategy? When you set your competencies up, you design those competencies or those attributes so that they give you the skills you need to deliver the strategy, to give you the winning formula that you want to use as you go forward. How do you modify or customise these to your organisation? Each attribute can be defined within the system, and this is what Pete's got on the screen here, and you go through and adjust the scoring, determine what are the criteria or the elements that you want to sit behind each of those particular attributes. So that gives us our competencies in the organisation. We need to have a process that allows the appraisal of performance. So there's 3 stages with this. First stage we call feedback. And here's an example where on the system, like a little tweet, if you're logged in, you can simply identify the person and provide a comment on how they have done well or not done so well in a job. So instead of doing an appraisal once a year and you sit there and say, what the hell did the person work on? Leaders, team leaders, even clients or peers generate this regular feedback. And it just sits in a log so that when we get to the next stage of conducting a review, which is a review of someone's performance on a project over a period of time, there's some objectivity because we've had a whole range of feedback. We go into the review process, which has got to look at the feedback that's been accumulated, and we identify from that key learnings, development areas, performance assessment, and introducing a very important concept of proof points. So when we get to giving a review process, there is something that's quantitative, not qualitative. It's something that's factual, not emotional, saying to that person, you know what, 3 of the reviews came through and this issue, you're very abrupt with clients. This issue came up repeatedly. Or someone, you can see examples where people have, dealt with difficult negotiations, and that allows us to say they've done very well in that and they're possibly ready for advancement. So again, it's capturing data and objectivity. So the principle here is gather lots of feedback to go into a periodic review or a review of the project, and then if you're going to do appraisals on an annual basis or semi-annual basis, then look at the results of those reviews to come into the appraisal. Now, every time one of these online feedback reviews or appraisals done, you can do it on your mobile, you can sit there, it gets sent to the person, they can respond. If everyone's happy, they can confirm back, goes onto the HR record, sits there as a factual record of that discussion. If there's a problem, get together. When we go to do an appraisal, imagine starting as an Olympic athlete and you're told you're a runner and you go and you're at the starting line and you fire the gun and off people go, but no one's told you how long the race is yet. If you're going to appraise someone, you've got to appraise them against a set of targets, agreed targets. And we call that the career development plan. And the career development plan has actually got, and this again, so you'd think Richard and I worked on this together, wouldn't you? Comes back to what are the key elements? Well, ask someone what their objective is. It's all about them. Where do you want to be in 2 years' time, 3 years' time? And if someone wants to be overseas in 2 years' time, isn't it better to know and have an honest discussion and have that recorded there? A job description. Job descriptions typically get written at the time of employment but never get changed. So if you've been at BHP for 20 years, the job description that's on your contract is probably the one that was there when you were offered the job. Our view is a job description needs to be upgraded each year. Otherwise, how can you appraise someone against the job they're doing? The job description is ancient history. So you've got to have the job description. The job description defines what the responsibilities are of that person. What do we expect that person to do in that year? You can't measure them against something unless you tell them what that is. Business plan objectives. What's the business trying to do, and what part of that, all business plan objectives should cascade down and end up in somebody's personal plan. Some people may not have business plan objectives. I mean, the receptionist clearly won't have business plan objectives, but they will have a job description that says courteous, ask people if they want a cup of tea within 2 minutes of arriving, all those sorts of things. So everyone's going to have some objectives. We want key development areas that are things that have been identified in the process of doing the work where you need to improve. So don't say, look, you've got to lift your attitude with respect to how you deal with clients. Have that documented and have that as a goal in their career development plan. And finally, work-life balance. Why don't we put in there that someone wants to have some personal objectives, learn a musical instrument, travel, you know, get fit, lose weight, whatever it is. I mean, if we're saying we're a caring organisation, allow people to put a personal objective in that plan. So that's a bit hard to see as a screenshot, but that's exactly what it is. And in the career development plan, you having put those things in, you break them down to KPIs and then break them down to milestones. And milestones allow you to progressively look at how you are progressing towards that objective. And you can update your KPI as an employee. You go in, you choose the particular KPI, whether it's monthly, quarterly, half-yearly, whatever way you want to work your milestones, record your progress and mark whether you're on track or behind. If you wanted to, you could build that as a burn-down chart that says, this is our target for the year was 10 million units, whatever it is. This is what we've now got left to do, as against this is what we've done. So it looks at it from that perspective. Final area in the people management system, structure follows strategy. If we've got a strategy to achieve this certain, you know, Bullseye's got a strategy to grow in Asia. We like the idea of position description. So we have our org structure and then we say, what are the high-level responsibilities for people in each of these positions? Have a template of those sitting there, and then when it comes to doing a job description, this is not a 2-hour exercise. This is simply pulling down the template for that position, that grade, that level, and completing it. So we go from a generic sales role into the specific targets that get broken into specific KPIs that get broken into milestones, and that's the thing that sits in your career development plan, and you can update it progressively, and that could be reviewed by your team leader. You can have a warning bell go if someone's well behind, email that goes out to your team leader to say so-and-so was well behind their target. Let's have a look at how we manage behaviours. So the key points here, if you want to manage behaviours, you've got to decide and tell people what the desired behaviour is. You can't assume that what you want people to do is what they're going to do unless you tell them what the code is. You've got to regularly give people feedback about their behaviours, like children. A couple of things that are very important about influencing behaviours. People are enormously influenced by role models. A role model doesn't necessarily mean the CEO. A role model can be somebody who does that particular thing really well. And then recognition, when somebody's done a good thing, tell them. Now, here's the key thing. We write rule books about this is how you behave. But we've got to understand what drives behaviours. Behaviours are driven by perceptions, which drive emotions, which drive our motivations, which drive behaviours. And most decisions are based on emotions, not on rational or logic. So if you just think of the perception is the company's not doing well. The emotion that drives is an economic fear and a fear of failure. I'm going to lose my job. My motivation is I'll do whatever I need to do to keep my job. So my behaviour is I will do all the work myself and I won't share it with the team. Maybe we can have a discussion about that. Who and where in the organisation determines what the right behaviours are. The brand guy's going to say it's the brand values. The economist or the strategist is going to say it's all about your core competencies. HR person's going to say it's all about values and beliefs and belief systems. And I think the reality is if we fail to plan and get those on the same page, it's a plan for failure. So how do we start to capture and recognise behaviours? System called kudos. Kudos. It's like creating a tweet. In the people profit system, you simply open the kudos button. There are a number of behaviours that are identified and you can set those up to be anything you want. And a little note, a little tweet, I think 500 characters, and that gets sent off, and that is then posted so that's recorded, and we'll come to that. So the badging is quite important in getting the desired behaviour. It's a way to communicate with people. So you select the appropriate badge, you can preset them, customise them and all the rest of the stuff. And then when we measure the kudos that have been set out, we can start to see what's happening in the organisation in terms of the behaviours. So here's looking at who's being recognised, and we're seeing a kudos was given for innovation, for managing time and for teaching people. Here's the breakup for people under 30, less with 5 years experience and so on. You can have a look at what is the trend. So we've had a big push around here on building quality in what we do. So the observations, the kudos is posted, recognise more and more that people are doing good work and creating quality. Let's have a look at who is sending the kudos. Kudos is sort of, who got kudos, but it would be very informative. I would like in my organisation see lots of kudos being given by the senior people because they are the best mentors. How do we measure kudos? Leaderboards, giving prizes, giving kudos currency. So kudos gives you a weekend away, or it's recognition, or any system you like. If you gather that data and get that recognition, how you use that is very much on how you want to run and what your policies are, but you can do that. Heavy duty slide. Where is this taking us and why is this important? This is important because the world workforce is changing and everyone is into gamification and comification. Comification is using comics as a way of communicating policy and things rather than writing bloody great Word documents. Now, gaming theory, and Bullseye's got 8 people that work in this. I'm going to take just a second on this. Why do people play games? Well, they seem to enjoy it, and there's 3 concepts that the gaming specialists, who are, by the way, typically mathematicians and psychologists, come up with. When you play a game where there's an uncertainty and an optimistic chance of winning, the experience that's created is called flow. And when you're in flow, you are extremely productive. You are extremely, word Richard used a lot, engaged. The magic circle, when you're inside that game, the social norms don't apply. So you can be a little unconventional, and people are. People prefer to play with each other against a common foe. And they undertake and do those tasks quite willingly. And finally, FIRO is that, yes, we've won, expression, celebration, reward, recognition. So gaming theory actually has a lot to offer and is built into the products that we're using so that we can influence behaviour. So if we go back to this sort of flow of how behaviours are driven, if we set environments where we see, hear and feel the right sort of behaviours, like a sense that this is a great company, and that generates pride and empathy. I want to be like this company. My motivation is I've got to demonstrate that I belong here. I've got to be proud to wear the uniform or the Guernsey, and the behaviour is, as Jack Gibson said, played hard, did good. Last one very quickly, organisational, affecting changes in organisation. And I just want to sort of a couple of magic circle moments with this. I think in organisations, many are as thick as a brick. And I say that as an introduction to two concepts, porosity in organisations and permeability. We know that the way you influence change is by constant communication. What we don't know is how far into an organisation that communication goes, and typically we find it doesn't go very far. So porosity is this sense of how diverse on any metric is the organisation. So we can measure, again, from the people register, if you've got the information there in place, you can measure the porosity. What's the diversity? If you're an engineering firm, production, you're heavily engineering. You can have a look at the grade and the range of seniority in the organisation, perhaps by department, so that you can see in the production team there's a big range in grade, and there's the mode. Whole bunch of information that tells you something about the stuff. We could have a look at it by demographics. People often do. We could, if we happen to have a licence, you could do some sort of thinking style analysis and see how people think, and you'll see that that's the spread. This is anyone familiar with the HBDI process, which it's quite good. You know, you've got your creatives and your rational feeling and process people. Now, importance of that, of course, is when you're talking to people, if you know how they think and how they like to be talked to, then the way you communicate to them will be structured. So people who are conceptual, give them scams. People who are process-oriented, give them a process map and a checklist. Permeability is where this gets to be useful. How far into the organisation has our message gone? Where has it stopped? Why has it stopped? If we want to affect change, you can't just sit at the top and say, this is what we are now. Sand, how far is it going to go before it reaches the stop? Now, I think we can actually get data around this. Imagine if we sent out a communication that said, this is where our new brand positioning is, and we use this little survey tool, which is part of the system, sent it out to everybody that said, our brand is a price leader in all segments. Just agree or disagree, yes or no. And if what came back, and the green line is the porosity metric, in other words, what is the range of variation within the organisation, and then how far into that variation did the message actually go. So you've seen that by grade, the senior people got it, the rest didn't. By gender, didn't seem to make much difference. The people who got it were equally male or female. The millennia workforce rejects structure. They just do. They just do. But we need structure if we're going to manage and coordinate and move forward organisationally. Structures can be institutionalised through digital platforms, gaming, gamification, and the use of comification as a language to impose structure without it being an imposition is a very, very powerful new tool, and it's a new language. You can't manage what you don't measure. Big data is coming. Analytics is a very, very powerful tool. So we've now got an ability to shape our organisation, and of course if we don't, like that potato root, it will grow where it wants to grow. If we don't put the light there to shape where it grows, it will grow the way it wants to grow. So brand can absolutely be built from the inside out, but you have to treat brand as a management issue. Thank you.